Welcome everyone to the 2026 edition of SU Sabbatical Officer Candidate Hustings. I am Shamar Price, the current SU President for Communities and Common Rooms, and I will be chairing this today, as well as the Conference of Common Rooms meeting happening immediately afterwards, so stay tuned for that. So I'll basically run through this event. It's pretty much like any other hustings you've been to. You're going to get a chance to hear from each of the candidates, as well as you'll be given the opportunity to field them questions. Please be aware that this event is being live streamed and recorded. And I would like to remind everyone to be kind and polite and thankful of the candidates for giving their time to not only be here, but to run for the position of sabbatical officer. Each candidate will have 1 minute to introduce themselves. We will go in that order and reverse it for questions. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Catherine. Well, let's give a round of applause to Catherine, Pablo, Henry, and Kanza. And so we will start with Catherine. You have 1 minute to introduce yourself and your platform.
Hi everyone, I'm Catherine Koda-Balogun. I am a finalist in history and politics, and I'm very excited to be running for this position. I am a Black British woman with a Lagos background who attended state school before Oxford, and I really understand what it means to move between different worlds and learn different rules of institutions that weren't designed with you in mind. Studying my course at Oxford has not only been life-changing, but also been an amazing opportunity for me to transform my life and meet lots of different people. So I'm so excited to be able to give back to the university that has meant so much to me. At Oxford, I have worked across multiple spaces. I was JCL Access Officer, developing our alternative prospectus. I am currently an undergraduate admissions ambassador. I'm delivering work for organizations like Target Oxbridge and unique programs. And I also served as president of the Oxford Law Society, managing sponsorship and large-scale events. So with all these experiences, I've represented students in many capacities, and I've worked within lots of networks on a mentorship level and on a personal level as well. And this, just cements my ambition. So yeah.
Perfect. Right. Next, we'll be moving on to Henry.
Hi everyone, I'm Henry. My pronouns are they, them, and I am a first-year master's student studying gender studies at Lincoln College. Before this, I completed an undergraduate degree at Somerville, studying ancient and modern history. I think this unique positioning of having an understanding of both the undergraduate and the postgraduate experience is really useful for a role like this. And I've represented students throughout my entire time at Oxford. This is an institution that I profoundly love and I have taken so much from, and I want the chance to be able to give a little back. I have served, and I currently do serve, as a divisional rep for the humanities, so have experience sitting on important decision-making committees in academic contexts, representing student voice. Within the Class Act Society, both inside and outside of the SU, I've set up the Subfuss scheme to provide free academic dress for freshers who can't afford it when they arrive at the university. Beyond this, I've held various different posts for marginalized communities across different societies and my current MCR. So I am very well placed to represent a lot of different students across the university.
Perfect. Just for clarity, and this goes for the questions as well, once your allotted time is up, I will bang the gavel once and you're free to finish your sentences, and that goes for all the candidates. Next up, we will have Pablo.
Oxford is a perfect institution. You all look confused. Of course it's not. It has problems. If you see problems, vote Pablo. I'll sort it. But why me? Because I have a track record of over a decade of experience with welfare and advocacy, whether I've served as your peer supporter or welfare officer, vice president for the college MCR or ball committee at New College, and as junior dean and now student welfare advisor. I've done it all, and with results. And I, now as a final year PhD student in clinical neuroscience, want to serve you as your president for welfare, equity, and inclusion. Because you deserve to be at a university where if you see problems, you should be able to vocalize them, and someone like me, Pablo, can sort them. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And now, give me 1 second. Now we will have Kanza.
Hi everyone, my name is Khansa and I'm currently doing a DPhil in education. I'm running for this post because, as an international student coming here directly from Pakistan with a visual disability, I have seen firsthand the impact of these exclusionary institutions where everything ranging from visual posters to PDFs that are hard to sign end up as barriers for students who come from these backgrounds. I'm here not to bring to you a one-size-fits-all solution. I'm not promising that I will be able to solve every single person or that every single person's problems or that I have every single solution, but I can promise that I will listen to everything you've got and do my best to articulate it in spaces where we've never gotten a seat at the table. I have a range of experiences of designing solutions to inaccessible issues, whether that's around gender inequities, whether it's around financial equity, or whether it's around disability. And you may not see me representing all of you in terms of the physicality of it, but I do promise to represent your thoughts, your voices, and invite you to become a part of the solution that has never really included us. Thank you.
All right, so we will now be going on to the questions portion. We're going to reverse the order if that's all right. So we're going to start with Kanza, and then you'll pass it down. The first question is going to be quite a broad one. So how will you ensure that the SU's equity officers who seek to represent marginalised student groups, as well as marginalised student groups more generally, have their voices represented in the work you do with the university? You have 1 minute.
So I think ongoing consultations is the answer to this question, and not just consultations, also constant feedback loops, and inviting them to do monitoring and evaluation. So I'm not just saying I will deliver, I will ask you to give me feedback. And if you think I haven't delivered, you can always call me out, and I will try to make sure that those officers' voices are heard, their feedback is understood, and that they are constantly asked for solutions and for their critique. I think that's how it's important to integrate voices within the process itself instead of just keeping it as the first step.
I do agree with what Kanza has said. And for me, I think a huge part of it is listening. And listening comes in many formats for me. And as someone who, if I were to hold this post, I'll create many formats for those to get access to me. So I'll be as accessible as possible and as approachable as possible. And so having regular office hours so people can know predictably where I can be in a physical space, they can come and approach me with their issues. Within the SU at the office, they can come and meet me there. I would also like put myself out there in the community. So pints with Pablo's at your favorite pub, or going to a cafe and grabbing a coffee, more casual settings so you can, just hang out. And in hanging out and talking, issues will come out, and you will, tell me what you're struggling with or those you represent are struggling with. And I will take that to the administration so that we can make change. Also, virtual ways for you to get in contact with me so you can tell me what the issues are. So many ways and points of contact so that you can have your voice being heard and I can listen to them.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with what everyone has been saying. I think it's important to be very visible. The SU, I think, suffers from a lack of trust because people don't see it in their lives. They don't understand what it does for them. And office hours is definitely an important way of doing this, and constant communication with those officers is also. But it's about more than just that. And I would also speak to various student societies like the LGBTQ plus SOC. It happens here for sexual violence, and consult with student experts who really know what they're talking about on these issues beyond just another layer of bureaucracy that students don't quite understand how to interact with. It's about being everywhere and talking to anyone who wants to give feedback.
The question again.
Yes, so how will you ensure that equity officers, as well as marginalised student groups in general, have their voices heard in the work you do?
Thank you. Echoing what everyone has said, I believe the main thing is thinking about how we can improve systems to make them more robust. And again, as Henry said, reducing bureaucracy. Generally speaking, I think facilitating stronger links between the SU and college systems as well as societies is the best way to not only gain visibility, but also create a platform that students can access more readily. I think these systems are there. The SU has already done such an amazing job, but I think creating more transparency and more openness so students access it more readily is the best way to go. So things like conducting regular welfare accountability reports, cross-college consultation forums, and also improving communication between college welfare teams and the SU. I really firmly believe that the best way to reduce confusion is to create better clarity and create a more standardized and built-in process. Other ideas I also thought as well would be, again, thinking on how we can reinforce a more collegiate level supporting system and, again, creating that visibility as well. So, yeah.
Okay, so now I will be opening up to the audience to see if they have any questions. Other candidates for positions, you're free to ask questions as well. All right, we will start with you over there.
How are you guys? Thank you. That was great. I'm just curious. I'd love to hear maybe one tangible initiative that each one of you is thinking about doing.
Okay, we will start with Kat. We'll reverse it again.
So one of the first ones I thought about was having digital access schemes. So as a neurodivergent student, I suffer from ADHD. One thing I've struggled with is how the disability network traditionally tends to conflate different types of issues. So everything is sort of put into one system. So that's not to say that the university doesn't already have great frameworks in mind for it, but having ones that are better integrated with the college, so things like self-disclosure, for instance, could be such an issue. Because one thing that I've experienced is how neurodivergence, typically speaking, can be pathologized. There's a certain stigma around it, and there is a trend for women in particular, and Black women, getting late diagnosis towards later in life. So again, having more standardized frameworks, so clearer tutorial outlines, deadline flexibility, digital access schemes and workshops readily available to help support students who either come in already knowing they're neurodivergent or get their diagnosis later on. So that, again, looks more like having those standardized systems so that neurodivergence isn't an exception but the norm. So things like already having certain colored papers for exams or having tutorial training programs for tutors so it's not so ad hoc and variable. So, yeah.
When I've been at this university, I found some of the most important things that have really helped me get through have been the jobs that I've been able to have while on the courses. I've worked at open days at various faculties. I've worked as a telethon cold caller for alumni at Somerville, my old college. And I've seen schemes work at Somerville for inviting students to help out with admissions process and introducing students and calming them down before their interviews. These paid opportunities, sometimes coming with free housing for a VAC period, is really important to enable students to be able to afford to live in this city. And I think promoting these jobs for students is a really important way at getting to the cost of living crisis and helping remedy that.
Thank you for that question. Now, in the reports by the SU, students have frequently reported isolation is a huge concern for them here at Oxford. A lot of students come here, they don't know no one. And not everyone is extroverted and will put themselves out there. One of the first initiatives I want to implement is Oxford Pen Pals, where students can, across colleges, connect with each other. Meet someone maybe who's very different from them. They can hear someone's perspective who has a different background. And by forming those connections, it can help to develop empathy among our population. Like a lot of students come here and just focus on their degrees, but they don't ever consider things outside of what their specialty is. And I want to unify Oxford more so that we can be a more cohesive cohort of students who can fight for social justice issues. And by just starting with friendship, you're taking care of people's well-being and by extension, their welfare.
Okay. Hold on. Yeah, go.
So the first thing I want to do is an accessibility audit, physical, virtual, and also emotional, of the entire university student experience. That includes looking at social media, That includes looking at social isolation, job market, all of this stuff. I want to dedicate a certain amount of my presidency to this work, and I will not be doing the accessibility audit. I want to invite student consultants who are experts from within these different communities that we want to represent, for them to do these audits and propose solutions accordingly. And I think that's the one tangible thing I want to do: bring all the different elements of the student experience together, not have 50 billion surveys that nobody reads through, have tangible surveys with invited speakers who are and students and consultants who are compensated for their labor, give us their thoughts, share their solutions that actually can then be implemented.
Perfect. Okay, so we will now have a question from the incumbent, Alyssa.
Hello. So this time last year, I was sat in your position and I tried to make 12 promises, 12 months, 12 actions. If any of you have read my manifesto, which one of those 12 actions would you like to build on? If you haven't read the manifesto, what have you seen during our SAB team, our term, that you'd like to build on?
Okay, just to make it fair. Yeah.
If you were to say your name, for
sorry.
those of us who can't.
Yeah, sorry. Alyssa Brown, the current Welfare, Equity and Inclusion Officer. President.
Okay, so yeah, just for fairness, we're gonna again reverse the order. So we're gonna start with Kansa.
Thank you. So I really like your new initiative where you have started that conversation with the Vice Chancellor, and the sustainability one that just happened. So I think that is one initiative that I would like to carry forward.
Wonderful.
I think one that I saw that I was very impressed with was the bike scheme, the centralized bikes for those who are victims of theft. We all sometimes, those of us who cycle, probably go to bed and wonder, will I see my bike in the morning? And Oxford and Cambridge are notorious for stealing bikes. And I think it's lovely that we have an initiative where those who, no fault of theirs, have lost their means of transportation can have something to hold them over until it's replaced. And so that's something I would look to expand and continue, even beyond the cycles. There are other things that students, by no fault of theirs, just cannot no longer access. And so I want to continue the bike scheme so much.
From your manifesto, I really liked your gym scheme where you would allow for some collaboration between colleges and between the university and IFLI gym to reduce that cost of a gym membership, or to allow colleges, students from colleges which don't have a gym, to access a closer gym. I think forcing someone who's at college like St Anne's, for example, to trek all the way down to IFLI when Somerville has a perfectly reasonable gym right there is something that can be a reasonably easy fix and something that is achievable and can really improve everyone's quality of life. And I'd like to take that forward.
Hi, I was going to talk about the bike scheme as well, because I've actually been a victim of bike theft. But I guess off the top of my head, throughout, I think the All I Want for Christmas sort of program you did, you offered lots of food and meat pies, and you sent around sort of Christmas messages via Instagram as well, I saw, which was very friendly. The Student Voice podcast, I think, is lovely as well. So again, listening to different students' perspectives. I'm pretty sure it's like a joint initiative that the SU has done, generally speaking. And also as well, the IFLI gym membership. I play lacrosse at Oxford, so I think that's an amazing scheme as well, getting people more active, an excellent way to reduce isolation, increase fitness and productivity as well. So yeah, but I really like the Student Voice. I think as well, it's a great way for students to sort of articulate their problems, talk about any issues or concerns that they have. So yeah, just a variety of different things. So
Perfect. We've got about 5 minutes left. So are there any other questions from the audience? Yes. And if you could state your name.
Hello. I'm Saket. I'm the current International Students Officer, part-time officer in the Student Union. I had one question for all of you. How would you guys plan on collaborating with the equity officers and the part-time officers? And do you have any one certain initiative or a plan in terms of collaborating with them and have like taking care of other events happening?
All right, we'll start with Kat.
I think the best way as well is just regular meetings. And again, I think creating that accountability welfare reports, cross-college consultation forums, to finding ways to create connections between our equity officers at SU as well as some of the officers within college JCRs as well. Facilitating programs like digital workshops or digital skills clinics within colleges, things like lecture and tutorial accessibility, so pushing for recorded lectures as a default, and just a variety of different things. I think the best way is, again, creating community and creating engagement and connection. And I'm sure there's already things already done, but again, making them more regular, publicizing our minutes, maybe having more public minute exposure. That way we can get scrutiny and critique regularly, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think also to act as a bridge between us and the MCRs and JCRs is definitely of the most crucial importance. I really want to arrive at a much better and more standardized consent training for welfare officers and people who've arrived at the university. I want to provide for a lot more handover support for officers, and I think that's not something that one person in this role can be expected to have expertise in entirely, and it's working with those people who do have that expertise, which is those officers that you are one of, that I would need to be consulting. But I definitely don't want to step on people's toes. I think if there was too much sort of hierarchy and me telling you exactly what you need to be doing, that's just not on, and there needs to be a significant amount of leeway in allowing you to pursue your own policies and projects, and then coming to me and saying, how can we make this happen?
For me, I'd make sure you know that how valued and appreciated you are, because so much work happens at Oxford that goes unnoticed. And in my previous leadership roles, where I have jurisdiction over other leaders, I always make sure that I'm checking in on you because you're taking care of everyone else, but you have to be okay before you can take care of other people. So it's a small gesture. It's like checking in proactively. What's happening now in your life? How can I best be of service? So, not peering over your shoulder to make sure that you're doing everything just right, but like, how can my expertise help you in your current role to serve your constituents? And also making sure, you have a big treat every once in a while, or take you out to make sure you're incentivized to do your job, to make sure that you know that your welfare also matters, including to those you also serve. So making the connection, keeping it strong. Yeah.
Yep, you may go now.
So I think some really important points have been made, which I completely agree with. I think three things are necessary. The first is connection, right? Making sure that they feel heard, and not just heard, any initiatives that they have, making sure that they have, those initiatives are actually realized, that they feel like they were able to make the contributions that they wanted to make, that they can always give me any feedback, that they can also rant about classes and professors and all of that stuff. And that if they have any ambitions in this role, they're able to realize those, but in a way where they feel supported and taken care of. So I think more than anything else, it just requires listening, being empathetic, and making sure that they realize that they have the power to do what they want to do without somebody holding them back or always scrutinizing their work.
Okay, wonderful. So, well, yeah, I think what we'll do now is give each of the candidates, before we give, we don't have time. But before we give the round of applause, we'll starting with Kanza, we'll have 1 minute to basically summarize and say anything that you didn't manage to say during the last half an hour.
I want to say to anyone listening that it's important to vote. Whether you vote for me or Pablo or any of the others, vote, hold us accountable. And this is your student union. And I really want to see an Oxford where people are able to talk about the student union in a part of their daily conversations. So that is what I hope to create. I've done a range of roles, whether it's as the departmental coordinator for my DPhil program, or whether it's, in my master's in development studies, being the student liaison or being the disabilities officer. My aim is always to develop a culture of access and communication and empathy, and not just talk the talk, but also walk it, get criticism, get feedback, and make sure that the university becomes inclusive and accessible for everyone. And so I hope you give me the opportunity to do that.
When I joined my undergrad's SU 10 years ago, I had a dream of changing the university's gym policies. And the senators, about 30 of them, told me, don't waste your time. Why did they say that? Because so many senators had come before me, and year after year, they had challenged the administration to change it, and to no avail. I changed that in one term. You see a problem, vote Pablo. I can sort it. I approach challenges from as many angles. I get the student voice involved, and I can use my charm to get the administration to listen to me. I know my abilities, and I would not put myself as a candidate if I wasn't confident that I could represent you and get the job done. So, I know you see the problems. You see me, Pablo. You will see them sorted if you put me into office. Thank you.
That's a difficult one to follow. I can also sort problems. In fact, I have. I've already delivered a scheme through the SU to provide those academic dress to people who can't afford it. I already know how the SU can be effective in student life, but I know that people don't think that it can be. I want people to be able to feel the SU, to see how active it is, and to find it to be visible and important in their daily lives. And I think I just wanted to also mention something I deeply care about, which is suspended students. I think it's completely unfair that someone who's had to suspend their studies for a year, probably in a horrible part of their life, is then immediately kicked out of their college and unable to access those support networks. That's also something that I would seek to change if elected. Yes, thank you.
Everyone was wonderful. I guess just echoing what everyone said, my main goal is to give back to the Oxford University community. I think every student here works so hard. We struggle with things like depression, isolation. The social media age has divided students in ways that are so unfathomable, algorithms, so many different issues. So I guess my main ambition here is not only to raise visibility, but to increase connection, to increase just the support that the SU can provide us. I've worked, as a governance and compliance officer at many organizations, whether it's at a QKRI research organization, through law. So I understand that a lot of the role does have to do with secretariat support, committee meetings, but balancing that sort of nitty-gritty practical work with, again, visibility online, attending workshops, creating connections with welfare officers, that's my main ambition and goal. And I guess just to summarize my general ideas, it's just increasing digital access and fair technology, making things more neurodivergent friendly, creating better career transparency, increasing academic access and research pipelines, welfare reform, and just all those different things. I know it all sounds very ambitious, but I think with good structures, with good visibility, with good connection and support, these are things that can be done on a bureaucratic level and on an emotional level as well. So yeah, thank you.
Perfect. You may now give the candidates a round of applause. Okay, so you are free to remain here if not. And then once all the candidates have left, we will now have the candidates for the president for postgraduates. So the SU president for postgraduate represents postgraduate students in relation to their educational experience at the university internally and externally. So without further ado, we will begin with the introduction. So let's start with, let's go the other way around. Let's start with Wanto. You have 1 minute.
Great. Hello. Are you guys hearing me? So my name is Wanto. I am the current president of Postgrad. So it's very fascinating that I put myself for rerunning. As I thought about this role, I remember almost 6 months to a year ago when I ran on a post. Now we have a whole pack that's justified the work we've done so far. My background is primarily, I'm originally from Liberia. Liberia is located on the west coast of Africa. I studied here for the Master in Public Policy and a master in comparative international education. My leadership background comes from working with young people from around the world. I served 4 years with the Department of Global Communication, the Youth Steering Committee at the UN, and I've also been a firebrand advocate for change. The best way I describe myself is someone who loves this institution, someone who loves the culture here, and believe that representation is an incredible privilege. Thank you.
We'll leave applause for once everyone spoke, just for the sake of time. So we will now go on to India.
Hi, everybody. Oh, can you hear me? Okay, cool. Hi, everybody. My name is India Kelly. I am studying for my MSc in archaeology, and I am from the US. I'm from Maryland in the US, if anyone knows where that is. When I decided to run for this, when applications opened, I told a couple friends in my department, and all of their responses was, "What does that mean? What does the SU do?" And I realized, okay, I really have to run because the people around me don't know what this does, and this is such a big resource that graduate students could be using. When talking about it also with my friends, a bunch of them were like, "Oh, I didn't know you could do that if you're only here for 1 year." And that made me realize that students who are on master's courses that are 9 months, 11 months a year don't really feel like they have a say in the university because they're not here for very long. And if I get the presidency for postgrads, I would like to do direct outreach to those students to make sure that they feel like they can make change even if they're only here for a short amount of time.
Thank you very much, everyone. My name is David and I study education at Wolfson College. Before I outline my plans during the questions and the closing section, I'd also like to highlight why I care so much about education and why education is personal. My late granddad actually was a pioneer of private education in China, founding one of its largest and most successful non-profit institutions to help tens of thousands of rural disadvantaged children access education. When he started, he couldn't get a government loan, he couldn't get support because they weren't sure about what role the private sector should play. But as a child, I seen how nuanced education is and how much he had to work for that to happen. When my mother was unwell with brain cancer between the ages of 10 to 12, we were really struggling. I was really struggling, but what really helped me was my school, my basketball club, other people who checked in on us, Rise, message of support, handwritten cards. Those times, like they still influence me and they still touch me. And when I think about the SU and an institution, we can't forget about the human relationships and the little things that we need to do right because we all go through difficult times. And I know that if we do persevere and if we do collaborate, incredible things can happen for not just us, but for the generation that follows.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Mergin. As you can see on the picture, I am from Mongolia and I study clinical embryology masters. Currently, I am the postgraduate taught representative for the medical sciences division. I'm also the course representative for the clinical embryology program. And on the social side, I'm the social secretary for the St. Hugh's Common Room. And from what I can tell you from my experience is that I know how the social side of Oxford University works. And what's most important for me is not about me or what I did, it's about you. And what I would like to focus on is the students who are the postgraduates who are here for only a year. And I know that for example, lots of my peers, they come for only a few months. The few months in the beginning, they settle in, they don't have time to be doing all this extra social, so many societies. And what I think is most important is that students should know in short on what to do and what is available for them in the most accessible way. That's what I would like to focus on as president. Thank you.
You may now give our candidates a round of applause. So just like before, in reverse order, starting with you, man. We will have a question from myself. So beyond, well, yourselves, if you are elected, postgraduate students have other sources of representation. Of course, you have your MCR presidents, your divisional representatives, and of course, your course/departmental representatives. How will you engage with all these sources of representation to ensure that the graduate student voice is represented to the highest level it can be?
I believe it's my turn now. So what I realized through my graduate experience is that the SU, colleges, departments, societies, they're all separate entities. And I realized lots of information are overlapping, and students, for example, graduate students, they have a lot on their shoulders. Some are carers, some are part-time students, some are working, some are doing lots of traveling midst their studies. And what I think is that lots of graduate students are overloaded with information. And the SU, the departments, the colleges, you get thousands of emails, thousands of information. Nobody knows what's going on anymore because there are thousands of WhatsApp chats. And I think what most students want, the graduate students, is they want to make the most of their time at Oxford. They're here for a reason. They worked so hard. They did everything they can to be here, and they want to make the most of their time here. And I would like to make sure that the different departments are collaborating effectively so that the students are not having to go through informations over and over repetitively. I would like to make sure that there's a introductory, maybe a 40-minute video, so that you can access it in one go and not go through thousands of messages, details, and so on. Thank you.
Megan, thank you so much for such a great response, and I resonate with a lot of the issues that you've identified and some of the potential solutions. Earlier today, I released a video highlighting my vision for Oxford and the SU, which broadly speaking is called One Oxford. It has multiple meaning. One of them is that the fragmentation, meaning the SU should be there as a central hub to consolidate. It also means one voice, one common room, one community. Everyone really matters. So on that point about how would I reach out and engage with different stakeholders, this sounds really simple, but it's actually not, in that we need to get the basics right of actually having a checklist of people and reaching them appropriately. And the case in point is, I'm from Wolfson College, which is the largest graduate college in Oxford. It has a very unique culture, a very unique governance structure, has lots of families as well. But as a matter of fact, for the past year, Wolfson was not actually in the loop of SU communication. And that's just a matter of fact that the email addresses are wrong. They didn't reach out. I believe Wolfson representatives have tried to engage as well. And it's things like that where when I first thought about the SU, my first point of contact was actually to reach my college, but actually they had no line of communication. They weren't involved in emails. And I think I used to make this mistake to think that if I send an email, then that's their fault now. And if they don't respond, that's up to them. But actually, I own the deliverable. I own the project. I own the responsibility. And therefore, I will make sure that I follow up and chase up so that everyone is heard and valued.
All right. So obviously, I would use the elected officials, the representatives, college presidents to gather information about what other graduate students need. But beyond that, there are many graduate students who don't particularly feel the need to or feel empowered to reach out. And so what I would like to do is reach out to them by doing office hours at different departments, for example, because a lot of graduate students do feel more connected to their department than maybe their college. Just like David, I come from a very large graduate college. I come from Kellogg. And there are over 1,600, I believe, people in Kellogg. And so I think it's unfair on the part of us to believe that the MCR president of one college that has maybe 1,600 people in the MCR versus 200 people in the MCR can have the same amount of knowledge about everybody. And so I would like to support all of the MCR presidents, but specifically the ones in the bigger colleges, to make sure that I can help them to hear more of other people's thoughts, not just rely on the presidents to be able to tell me as much as they can.
So it's actually a very interesting question, and that's part of the reason why I'm running. Over the period of time, we primarily thought that it's important to build up intensive communication space for students. And that's one of the reasons why I established the SU podcast. For the first time, we provide governance, because Oxford, there's a demystified space in Oxford. Students don't understand how decision-making process is being done at the top. And the podcast provides a space where we can be able to have critical conversation. We've had conversation with the vice chancellor. We have conversation with the proctor, the career services, and so forth. The other thing I'm also very passionate about is providing a space where postgraduate can have a voice. Because as a third degree students in Oxford, there's a unique graduate population, there's research and there's third degree, each with enormous experience. Because to achieve that, we established a postgraduate speaker series. David is one of the speakers, and he might be speaking on the 4th week, I think so. But in Oxford, the culture is also very fascinating. There is a student levy, which is critical. We must find solution for international students. Across committees in Prague or council and so forth, these are issues I'm working on. Artificial intelligence is also very critical. My goal is to be able to ensure we have exceptional solutions for artificial intelligence and the rest of the other issue. And I can share more through my bio, but I believe that we must create a solution. And this is one of the reasons why I'm running, so that we can continue the progress we made so far. Thank you.
All right. Oh, that was a question. So you don't need to. Huh? Yeah. No. That's completely fine. Questions. I was just going to say we'll leave the round of applause till the end, so we don't have to do it every time. Any questions? We'll start with.
Max, Cats MCR. Hello, Cats MCR. What's one motion you would like to bring up to the Conference of Common Room and see it potentially being passed if you're elected the president?
Very good question. We'll start with 1, 2.
Great. That's actually a great question. There's a primary motion that we have passed, which I'm very passionate about continuing. That is the fee and maintenance motion. The cost in Oxford is very critical. Student levy is protracted building on that may impact international students, even current students at a very disproportionate level. Accommodation is also very critical. Today we'll have a graduate accommodation conversation. Over the period of time, in 6 months, I've worked across Prague, across council, across joint student fees to create real solution. Currently, over that period, we can definitely say that current students will not be impacted by the current levy, but there is still a lot of issues to come about. In the coming time, the UK has become more polarized, meaning there will be more substantial radical motions that may impact the existing international student immigrant students that are currently. I do believe that we must work around solutions to that motion that we've already had to ensure that we can be able to lower the cost and ensure Oxford has real solution, not just for international students, but existing students. So I think there's already motion in, and I'm very excited to continue the work that we've continued to do towards achieving that motion. Thank you.
So one thing that I would like to do is create a web page that would highlight all of the fees for food for colleges, the accessibility features, things that are very personal to students, but aren't exactly something easy to find for each college unless you look at each single college website. Go through all that, write them all down, compare your lists. I think it's very important that information around colleges is accessible, and especially for students who are coming into the university. And so I would like to just propose a motion, hopefully it would happen, that we can just create a compilation of all the benefits of colleges, all their accessibility features, costs, just a comparative table essentially, but making all the information way more accessible than it is right now.
Thank you very much, guys. Really great ideas, and also some points on my manifesto about centralization of resources and comparison. And back to my campaign vision of one Oxford, one other meaning of it is one of the strengths of us as a university is our decentralized structure with different colleges and different departments, but also it's a bit of a lottery on which colleges you're actually at and which benefits indeed that you have. So one thing that have come to my mind as I was speaking to people about what's one thing that they would like to change is equity in postgraduate continuation fee. So those include people who do a master's and then get into a PhD, or if they pass their first year PhD into transfer status. Different courses and different departments currently have very different standards, and that understandably makes students very frustrated if one department just can waive it and the other doesn't. And I think that's just one example of something that we can think about, having the transparency and fighting for better equity. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great suggestions from all three of you. I would like to add that what I realized from talking to my friends, from other people in different colleges, is that Oxford has over 40 colleges, and Oxford as a university is a one central university. However, there are many little different colleges of different sizes. And what I think is most important is that once you're part of Oxford, it feels almost as if you're part of your college only for a lot of students. And I certainly think that if you have been admitted to Oxford, you should be able to access other colleges as well, just because you are part of Oxford. And I think most importantly, lots of students would like the different formals at different events, and their Oxford experience is limited to their colleges most of the time. And what I would like to do is for graduate students to be, because they're here for only such a short amount of time, to make the most of their experience so that they're able to access other colleges. And for example, if you want to visit a different college that you didn't get into, you would need a friend there to go to their formals, for example. So I would like to make sure that all colleges are accessible to all graduates. Thank you.
Perfect. Do we have another question from the audience? All right, we will go back to Alyssa for another question.
I think I should just keep a microphone here to save the CEO from too many steps. So I think it's really important that the candidates have done their research. I know that the JCR, MCR presidents are expected to look at your manifestos and formulate decisions, some of whom will hold endorsement. I don't know what the word is, but we'll try and give endorsements, and the members and who they represent will also need to look at the manifestos. So, building on transformation, what and this separate question for Wanto, because he's at advantage here. What policies or motions in this whole period, in this 6-month period, this academic year, would you like to build on? And then for Wanto, continue on.
Okay. Who did we start with again? I just forgot. We'll start with Megan.
Yes. So could you hear me? Yes. I have bad hearing. Could you just summarize quickly? Yes, thank you.
So in short, over the course of the year, we've done some things. What one of President of Postgraduates incentives would you like to build on or change?
Okay, so I would like to, what I think is most important is that what we have as the presidents of postgraduates, for example, is I don't believe in necessarily a position, for example, or a certain direction. I would like the students to decide that. So I would like to run a big campaign on what each MCR has an issue with and collaborate with each MCR to see what is the most common issue that we have. And I think a lot of realizations towards the SU is that lots of graduate students know the SU exists, but majority are focused on their departments because that's their main focus. And I think the SU should mostly focus on how can we further support the graduate students in how to make them thrive in their such a limited time that they're here. And I would like to propose a new idea that we should focus on each MCR should run and see what the issues exactly are, because I think it changes throughout each term and each year as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Alyssa. Firstly, well done to you, Alyssa, Shamar, Wanto as well, and the officer team for what you guys have been able to achieve in a transformation period. I think how you guys have been able to update everyone with your social media, your presence has been very noticeable, and the fact that we have so many candidates is a credit to your service and your dedication as well. Something I find personally really fascinating about this transformation process is the change of incentive structure. So examples might be the retitle of the role from officer to president or the flat hierarchy structure. And what I find fascinating about it is people here, lots of us volunteer, and we need to go above and beyond in order to serve and in order to care. And I think one of the benefits of the transformation is that we're really prioritizing how we value people, how we group people, how we lead people, how we manage people. And that's very much what I would like to really prioritize understanding if I was elected to the role and understanding where we can further improve so that everyone, regardless of their position, involvement, feels like they're appreciated and that they can affect meaningful change. So credit to the team, but let's build on what we have already done. Thanks.
So the thing that I've found the most helpful from the student union has been the student advice pages, specifically the advice on finding housing. As an international graduate student who couldn't get housing with my college, it was very overwhelming to figure out how to find housing. And 60% of graduate students are international. And just as an international student, you can't have a UK guarantor, right? So the student advice pages helped me personally find my options for finding housing out of college. And I would like to expand on that, make the site make the site bigger, have more options available, update it. Just make sure that anyone who needs help finding housing can find housing, because it's a very stressful situation when you find out that you are unable to live in college. And yeah, so thanks to the student union for making those pages. It seriously saved me in the beginning of this year.
So is a very great question, Alisa. The first thing is that Oxford is a very fascinating place. There is independent college, independent university, and there is also independent proctors. In the middle of that point, the SU serve as a representative body to represent student issues. A lot of the work we do with the SU is primarily about representation. That means engagement is just a bonus aspect of it. And as postgrad president, I have a chance to sit in more than 21 plus senior leadership committee that include council, that include prac, graduate admissions. So what I will be very interested in is how do we make an effective representation that lead with student perspective. And this year, I've established a graduate working group, graduate thought, and graduate research working group, because there's a wider range of issues between both thought and research. My goal for second term is primarily to ensure that we make that group effective to generate perspective that can provide an informed representation across committees. I think we also need to do a lot of work across JCR and MCR representation by providing some sort of collegiate representation between both institutions. And Shema has done a great job with CCR, and I think I'll be very happy to build on that to see how we build that representation between both groups. The third thing is the engagement aspect. One of the things that I'm primarily looking at is to be able to set up a space where students can easily have a conversation. And I'll be thinking about launching the Breakfast Club. And the idea of the Breakfast Club is that students from both undergraduate and graduate can gather at a specific place, have free breakfast, and just talk about issues that matter. There's more to this. You can check my bio to the plans and some of the comprehensive layout I've had for a second term. Thank you.
Wonderful. Any more questions? Okay, we'll go with the rep from Lineker College. And if you could say your name beforehand, just for the minute.
Hello. Okay. Yeah. Hi, my name is Sean Ngube, the representative for Lineker CR. So my question to the candidates is, what is the current most pressing issues within the graduate community in Oxford? And within that issue, which pathway do you think would be the most efficient and practical using your skill set and vision to solve?
Okay, and we'll start with Wanto.
Great. I think the most practical issue that I have seen across committees is the cost of living and the levy issue that is coming up. And the reason why I say this is because I've had privilege to be on committees. One, the levy issue is that we have absolutely no solution. We can project it, but obviously we'll have a projected impact on students. The cost of living will continue to exacerbate because obviously the university don't set the standard for it. So our role is to be able to ensure that we mitigate that cost. Over the period of time from the beginning of this term, we made a position on joint student fees and funding. It's confidential, but our position states where we stand with students. In Prague, I made a position in our last conversation that I wasn't going to respond directly to a position until we have student perspective. Today, we will be generating graduate student perspective on how to see the cost of living or accommodation. And I think the way we solve this to be able to have critical conversation is to make representation work. This is why we have the MCR press com, and we have some of these conversations around getting common view. CCR also is a great place to be able to go about it. And the third aspect is that we can be able to communicate effectively across committees, generating student views on some of these issues. That's where I stand with the cost of living. The third thing I'll probably add to this is that Oxford SU must take a lead role into the international levy advocacy across Russell Group, and primarily if we still will be in the US. Thank you.
So,
Yeah, no, go ahead.
so I believe that the most pressing issue for graduates right now is just graduate mental health. It's very difficult to either have do a PhD or to just do a short master's, especially at Oxford when standards are very high. You've already gotten into a school that makes you feel like an imposter sometimes. Um, and so, what I think the SU could do about it, first off, the SU is great at giving resources and just assisting students through the problems they have. But beyond that, I think with greater outreach to specifically departments where a lot of isolated graduate students spend a lot of their time, I believe that with outreach to the with outreach to the departments, we can just connect people more to the resources that are already there and expand the help that we can give to a larger group, especially those facing isolation who might not reach out as much.
Sean, thanks for the question. In fact, this is something that I've been focused on as well during my campaign. You can see that on my campaign website with One Oxford is that the core prompt is what's one thing that you would like to see change, and everyone who features will have their profile featured on my website so that other students can also see what other people are looking at. I've learned through this process that as much as I'm asking for one thing, it's actually most things are actually quite interconnected. So I'll give you what I have heard the most and what I think is most important, but I hope you don't take it as other issues are not as important. It's just that these come up often, and but they're all actually quite interconnected. So what comes up most often with postgrad is around funding and career. So funding's a particularly tough one because we really want to offer everyone scholarships and bursaries and hardship support, but obviously there are restraints in place and there are bureaucracy involved, there's a lack of funding, this whole sector is struggling globally. There are a few ways that we can look into it. We can look at our endowment fund, we can look at alumni, we can look at philanthropy, but I think that's hard to solve in one sentence. The other aspects around our careers is how we engage our students and alumni so that we build the bridge so that, because we have a very impressive set of alumni, and I think we can now demand more out of the SU to be the facilitator, the bridge, the connector to give students opportunities.
Hello. So I think the most important issue that graduates have is that the accessibility and understandability of the opportunities that they're available to. So I think different colleges have different opportunities, and I think that creates an imbalance towards the opportunities that you have. And for example, if you're part of a bigger college, you might be given more opportunities, for example, compared to a smaller college. And I think if you're admitted to Oxford as a student, the college that you're in shouldn't indicate how much opportunity that is available to you. So in regards to funding, I think there's a centralized funding system, but there's also college relevant funding. And what a lot of graduate students go through is there's a lot of information on the centralized funding available, and there's a lot of mismatch on informations on what is the timeline, what is going on, where do I apply, how can I get funding, and what is available to me. There's a lot of self-research, but also a lot of misunderstandings on how to access these informations. So I would like to make these informations easily accessible and logical. And I also would like the equality between the colleges to be more fair in terms of opportunities. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Say we have time for one more question because the other positions have less candidates, so I think we actually have more time than we thought. So we're going to go with the Merton MCR president.
Hi, Marcel Merton MCR. So if elected, even after taxes, your salary will be more than the PhD stipend that those lucky enough to get anything live off of. So what are your thoughts on this, and do you think it would make sense to tie your compensation to the PhD stipends?
All right.
Excuse me, could you repeat? Because I could not hear. Thank you.
Yeah, so your salary after taxes is going to be more than the PhD stipend that is basically mandated by the UK government. What do you think of this? Do you think it's justified? And do you think it would make sense to tie your salary to this government's set value?
Okay, thank you for your question. I think that's a very important question on equality as well. What I think is important, I would not hold a position on this. I would like to hear what the postgraduates and DPhil students have a say on this. So I would personally would run a session on what the postgraduate students think. Me personally, I don't think that is fair, but I would like to also know what the postgraduate students think about this. And if it occurs to be a problem, which I personally think it is, then I think there needs to be a discussion on the cost of living and also the availability of funds. And I think lots of PhD students are differently funded. So some are through scholarships, some are through stipends, some are self-funded. And I think it depends on each individual's case. But most importantly, I think the stipends is connected to the bursaries, and what's the SU's job is to make sure that the students are supported. So all the information should be accessible. What is out there, maybe you can get more funding through certain pathways, or if that is together an issue with all the graduates, then it could be raised as an overall Oxford issue. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Marcel. To be honest, I hadn't really thought much about the salary because when I put myself forward for this role, I kind of was more worried about the bigger issues around change rather than how the SU through the transformation process determine what the salary is. I'm sure there's a logic and there's a rationale and there's reasoning to it. I will just add though that we do need to recognize that people are taking a year out of their kind of usual career path. I don't think many people, necessarily see the SU like as the thing that they come to university and that's the thing that leads to something. So I don't know the logic behind why the current funding is the way it is, but I think that I don't quite see an exact parallel between PhD and an SU sabbatical officer because they're different roles and they're just different, right? Here you're working a job, there you're doing research, there you're a student, here you're also a staff as well. But I don't think any of us here are doing it for the money. I don't think you should do this job if you want to make a lot of money. But I do think that thank you for raising it for consideration because I hadn't really considered it, to be honest.
That is a great question. Oh, can you hear me? I feel like this doesn't sound like it's okay. That is a great question. Something I also did not particularly think of because I did not know the PhD stipend amount. However, pay PhD students more. I think PhD students do a lot of work and are underpaid. Yeah, I don't know what to say about how much this is worth or how much anyone's labor is worth exactly, but PhD students do deserve to make more money. I don't think that invalidates other people's jobs, but PhD students deserve to be paid more for their labor.
So I just searched the UK IRA standard is increased by 8%. That was October, right, for PhD student. The reality is it's a very fair question. I would say if it was more about salary or being paid well, I wouldn't run for the second term. I have 2 master mates. I have a master in public policy. I have a master in comparative international education. Obviously, I'm very underpaid with the SU, but and the SU is primarily very underpaid as well with the kind of work we do. One of the committee's paper you have to read have more than 200 plus pages. We sit on 21 committees. My schedule for the whole year is already set up. To take a holiday, I have to apply for the holiday. So it's a very competitive job. It takes serious passion, genuine intention, especially for institutional change to do it. So I would say it has nothing to do with salary. But I do understand the issue of PhD students. And this is why I said the levy is a very critical issue. If we don't resolve it and find solution, we obviously will have Clarendon scholars, Rose scholar, and some of the existing scholars being at a very detrimental space. So I'm very excited to see how we can solve it. The other thing that maybe you left out is the existing challenges with families in Oxford who are PhD students. That's a conversation we've been having across MCR, and we look forward to find solutions for it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll now move on to closing statements. But just so everyone knows, the PhD stipend is below minimum wage. So I don't think the SU could offer that to the staff members. So so We will start in reverse order for closing statements. And so, Wanto, you're up first.
First of all, I want to be extremely thankful to the SU staff, the CEO, and the electoral team, Jacob, Dossie, Lady, and everyone. Over the period of time, I think the SU present a real genuine opportunity to lead institutional change. Part of the reason I'm putting myself for a second term, it's not because I don't have anything else to do, but it's because I have a lot of issues that I'm very passionate about completing. I'm passionate about the student levy issue that is coming. I'm passionate about making the SU work in terms of representation. I'm passionate about ensuring that this institution become a real place for students, especially with the issues that are going on. And I'm very excited to talk about my campaign and the policies I'm looking at concluding. And I'm also excited to share the things I've done so far. We've done an amazing mind-boggling project. The podcast is a critical space to demystify the level of communication mechanism across committees and university. And that's a project I'm very proud of. The podcast series also were complemented by the speaker series. And the graduate working group will create a real space for representation. And I also think we need to do well with creating engagement of the SU. And we'll be launching the Breakfast Club to create a space where students can just gather, have conversation, share experience. And I'm excited for us to talk more about communication, ensuring that we can be able to build a student union that works for all of us. So I'll be happy. I'll be reaching out to communication, engagement, and get your endorsement. And if you've listened to the issue with Paige and you believe I deserve a second term, I'll be very happy to get an endorsement from you. Thank you so much.
All right, apologize for looking at my phone a little bit. I just want to make sure I hit every point. So if I am elected, I have 3 main things I would like to do. Number 1, increased outreach by reaching out to colleges and departments so that we can get graduate students who are more identified with their college and graduate students who are more identified with their department, as there is quite a bit of a range. Second, I would like to be a listening ear to all postgrads, from those who are here for 9-month courses to those who are part-time doing DPhils that can take up to 8 years. And last, I would love to add to the student advice section, specifically before she asked the question, I had that on there, to give more info, not just on housing, but also on general institutional knowledge, as many postgrads haven't come directly from undergrad, might have taken gap years. I took only 1 gap year, and it still was kind of an adjustment to go back to university. I can't imagine how it is to take 20, 30 years off and come back without just a refresher. Stuff that colleges don't tell you necessarily. I know a lot of colleges focus on Oxford-specific traditions, and I think we should just have a refresher for all the graduate students who are coming in. I hope that I can be an accessible and easy to talk to representative for all graduate students, and thank you for considering me.
So one of the saddest but also meaningful days of my life was when my late granddad passed away. We're from the city of Xi'an in China with about 25 million people. And by the afternoon, you couldn't even buy flowers anymore because everyone wanted to buy something. People flew in around the country in order to commemorate his service. You don't do that for a school principal who is distant, not relatable. And I know through my childhood that he didn't spend New Year's with our family. He was spending New Year's with students who had no home to go. He was advocating for scholarships, mentorships, and all these different programs because he wanted to hear the student voices. So I want to end today by saying that I appreciate you all asking us questions, but I also want to end on a challenge for you. I spent the past 2 weeks coding late into the night, as Wolfson people can attest, into a website and an app where everyone can actually share your thoughts, upload your profile, and see what other people's are. We're all representatives. I've now done more than 100 interviews with different students, different subjects, different colleges, different ideas. I'm only one guy with one set of life experiences. I'm not the smartest guy here. I don't know the most things, but I challenge you as well to actually have your voice and tell us what you actually think, because we can talk about it in the room, but until we have the infrastructure and until we have the mechanisms and structures in place, we're not going to be able to pull the resources, the talents to be able to affect systemic structural change. So I challenge you to visit my website and add your thoughts as well.
All right, thank you for your closing statements. So I would like to do mine. What I would like to mainly focus on if I were to become president of postgraduates is that I would like to make everyone's postgraduate experience optimized. What that means is that everything more accessible, more easier to understand, and saving time for very busy postgraduates. There are lots of different demographics in the postgraduate community. Some have children, some are carers, some have part-time jobs. So I think for a lot of postgraduates, the main issue is not about SU necessarily. It's about how to make their experience the best possible outcome as possible. And so as president, I would like to make sure that each and every postgraduate student is supported by the SU for their best outcome for their life. And I would like to say your priorities are my focus, and vote for Mergen. Thank you.
Wonderful. Round of applause. Okay, let us swiftly move on to our candidates for president for undergraduates. These are the candidates for the SU president for undergraduates for 2026 to 27. As you can see in the top left corner, that is what the role is responsible for. So let's get on to candidate introductions for Zagum and Digby. Let's start with Digby.
Hi, I'm Digby. I do archaeology and anthropology, and I'm a finalist. And I'm standing for the president of undergraduates because I believe in delivering meaningful change through representation. The SU is currently undergoing a period of profound transformation, and this transformation is very much rooted in ensuring that it can deliver democratic representation for all of its students. And this role as president of undergraduates is all about representation. I strongly believe that representation is more than just voting systems and committees. At its core, it must involve listening to individuals, their current barriers, and aims for the future. Following this belief, I would strive to be a point of contact between every student and the university, being open, approachable, and taking action to uplift student voices across the undergraduate body and make an impact at a university-wide level. I'm approaching this role with a range of prior experiences, including acting as JCR president for Hartford College, working in collaboration with the SU through the Conference of Common Rooms, and being elected as a voting representative on the SU's College Disparities Monitor. These roles have provided me with experience in confidently advocating for students' interests across both college and university-wide committees. I know how critical student representation is, and I know how difficult it is to get your voices heard on committees. However, I believe I can deliver tangible results that genuinely benefit the student body through clear representation. Thank you.
And now we will have Zagum.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I really love this university. I think there's something really very special about it. And I've done, I think, just about basically anything and everything you can do here. I've represented the university in 2 different sports. I set up my own society, which has gone really, really well and something I'm really proud of. I served on the JCR committee as a welfare officer, disabilities rep. I've advocated for disabled students in a number of different spaces, coming from some personal experiences. And so that's kind of what's brought me here today. And I think the SU is so much better than it was sort of maybe 2 years ago, I guess. I think the transformation has really been fantastic, but there's so much further to go. I want the SU to be something that feels like a meaningful part of your life, that feels like something that delivers changes for you. You know what it is, you know what it does. And also, I want to do a lot more listening. So that's something that's really important to me is hearing from student leaders, from leaders of large societies, leaders from common rooms, all kinds of places like that. I'm a big believer in listening to people and hearing what they're going to bring. And so I guess I'll go into some policies a little bit more, hopefully, in the questions. But I really believe in delivering some big, meaningful things, just a handful of things across the year that will help people believe a little bit more in the SU, believe that it can make some real changes, and listen to this body and other student bodies too, and be representative.
Wonderful. So for our 2 candidates, can we have a round of applause? Yeah. And so the first question will be a lot like the question I asked for the president of postgraduates. As SU president for undergraduates, you'll have, in some sense, competition, but we like to consider them collaborators in our mission to represent students. So for undergraduates, it is mostly junior common rooms, but you also have divisional reps and course reps. So how will you work with them to achieve your goals and the goals of the wider SU, starting with Zagum?
So I had a conversation with some people who've been involved in this body, and I think I see myself not as like someone who's going to be above or, someone who's going to dictate or talk to this body. I think this body and other student bodies, we should be the representatives of you. We should be delivering your missions. We should be listening to you. And so I think the Conference of Common Rooms especially, but as well as, really big societies that have real legitimacy and that students really take a part in, and other student leaders, we should be working with them. We should be listening to them. We should be delivering what they want. We should be their point of contact with the university and not necessarily just talking about what we want to them. And so I see those people as massive assets, right? No one student can possess the entirety of the knowledge of what it is to be a student of this university. But by listening to each other, by taking on board what everyone else thinks, we can build much bigger coalitions and make bigger change that way.
I completely agree with that. I do think that all of the other student leadership at this university is not a competition at all, but is in fact actually a unique privilege of being able to go to Oxford. I think the JCR systems and the vast and diverse range of student societies actually gives the student union the perfect opportunity, not only for collaboration, but also for greater outreach and engagement. Now, as someone who's been involved widely in PresCom and as a JCR president, I definitely promoted engagement with the student union because I think that the student union can serve as a perfect facilitator of bringing about university-wide change that often the JCRs individually might struggle with. And also the JCRs have specific problems that can only be solved by a wider body. But as that, I completely agree. The SU isn't above any of these bodies, but it's instead a collaborator. And it's only through working in partnership that you can actually achieve something more meaningful, because smaller societies are able to achieve more specific, precise action, whether that's within colleges or within certain groups that the SU would struggle to achieve. And the student union is able to achieve more meaningful, broad, systemic changes that individual societies would definitely struggle to.
Okay, so now we're going to open up to the audience for any questions. Gentleman over there.
Thank you. I'm Henry from Harris, Manchester. And this was a question that was kind of alluded to in the previous session, but how do you get the student union on the map? How do you make people actually really care and be passionate about it? At least from my observation, things really feel like they're siloed in the colleges, whether it's initiatives, whether it's sports, whether it's kind of, for example, Harris Manchester doesn't have a sporting field, but another college has a sporting field. And coming from the States where, when you're a student at that university, you have access to most of the university, whereas coming to Oxford, it kind of feels like 90% of the campus is almost off limits. I'd love to see how you are thinking about these problems.
So I think, thank you very much for your question. I think a lot of the kind of almost hopelessness towards the student union comes from the kind of impression that it's very hard, initially it might seem, for the student union to enact any changes upon colleges, grand old institutions that have been around much longer than sometime in the 1970s when the student union was founded. But I think actually the answer lies again in collaboration and engagement. And the way you achieve those tangibly is by firstly demonstrating small actions that you can carry out, demonstrate that the student union does have power to actually enact changes through representation on committees such as senior tutor committees, where you can address specific issues through voicing student concerns. Then through demonstrating that the student union has a clear mandate through CCR, demonstrating that it does actually speak for the students, you are then able to go to various different institutions, various different collaborators, and bring tangible, realistic changes with student backing and demonstrate that you're actually able to deliver this. And the best way to deliver it is through working with people rather than working against people. So that means if you want to open up access within a college, get the JCR on side, get the student body on side, go to the college, explain why this issue is important, and then work from there rather than come in from a point of opposition.
Thank you so much. One of my best friends goes to Harris Manchester College, so thank you for the question. I think part of it for me is that I want people to see and feel what the changes are, right? So I was speaking a lot about Henry a lot about this, and the SU does a lot of fantastic things, right? But I don't know if students necessarily always know what those are. And so I think I think it's been better this year, that the roundups and things like that have been better at communicating the information. But we hear a lot about, we're sitting on this committee, we're doing this, but we don't necessarily always hear what's going on in these committees. Like, what change are we advocating for? What change are we delivering? And I'm sure there's loads of fantastic work going on, but we need to hear a bit more about that as a general student body. I don't know that could happen through common rooms, that could happen through other student leaders. But I think for me as well, I want to deliver some some policies that really make a difference and that students feel in their lives. So one that I've got, for example, and this is built on a program that's been really successful at Cambridge, is delivering some free food support to students who are really in need. So Cambridge ran a program. It didn't cost them very much money, and they just a couple of times a week they handed out some free food to students who really needed it. And I've heard that it had an amazing impact on a number of students. And if people saw things like that, they would really feel that the student union can deliver massive change for them, and that it can be a really valuable addition to the Oxford environment and go beyond things that common rooms or societies on their own can't deliver.
Okay, another question from the audience. We will go with Max.
Thank you. Max Wong, CAT MCR. So one of the main challenges facing Conference of Common Rooms in the past year is not only lack of engagement from students, but lack of engagement from the presidents. Many motions were not able to be passed because not enough people actually ended up voting on it. And students are not aware of those motions because most of the presidents don't ever tell them those are the things that they're going to vote on. So what are your ideas, if you're elected president, to change this whole system of lack of transparency and engagement?
Me first, right? Yeah. I would say it's much better than it was. And so I was at the last disastrous meeting of the student council in sort of HT24, when there was about maybe 20, 30, 40 people there, and it was just an utter disaster. And like the student body as a whole had nothing to do with the institution, really. There was a real disconnect, and that I think is what started the transformation process. And so I think we're in a much better space now, where people who have a real, like a democratic, legitimate mandate are the ones doing the representing. But that doesn't mean that there's, not a long way to go on that. I've been thinking about this too. I think we should ask and encourage JCR presidents and MCR presidents to do, I don't know if this is the same at other colleges, like a little bit more like feeding back into their common rooms and the people who are engaged as to what's going on and what's happening and what changes are being advocated for. I think a lot of this is just communication loops. It's making sure students know what's going on, especially engaged students. So I consider myself a fairly engaged student in what's going on, and I don't even always know what Conference of Common Rooms is voting on, what other people are doing. Something we do in the party I'm a member of is whenever we pass a new policy at the youth conference, we do a massive post about it. We do a push about this is the new policy we passed, this is what it means for you. And I think things like that could be a really good way of transmitting more information.
As someone who was sat on CCR, I am aware of the disappointment when one of the motions didn't pass due to a lack of threshold. But I definitely think the way that you increase that engagement is, as president, is serving as a representative and also serving as a representation of the SU by turning up at PresCon, by turning up to speak with JCR presidents, by interacting with them, by encouraging that vote, by contacting them, by reaching out. And definitely when we started discussing CCR more broadly at PresCon, we saw far greater engagement from all JCRs as a result of those discussions more recently. And I definitely think being able to improve engagement goes hand in hand with that kind of collaboration and actually the delivery of the goals in the end. So CCR will become more effective as it's able to demonstrate its effect and as its engagement increases.
Wonderful. We have enough time for both of you, so let's go over Alyssa and then we'll go with Kat after. Yeah, sure, why not?
Thank you so much for your responses. They are very insightful. Part of the main job description for President undergraduates is focusing on the educational experiences of students. And one thing that I've noticed on a nationwide level is increasingly, even Oxford students graduating are struggling to find jobs. We've seen article reports on many news media outlets of students who went to Oxford or Cambridge working at Lidl post-graduation. Not to say that there's anything wrong with people working in those sort of service industries, but having spent 4 years to get to one of the best universities in the world, being promised many job prospects, it can be quite disheartening. I'm aware the university has an amazing career service, which is working around the clock to provide that. But in what ways are you going to help students, not only on an educational level in terms of their mental health and also sort of studying, but also how they're able to translate that experience to, again, getting jobs, supporting students in that transition. Because you often have two sets of students, those who get, all sorts of internships, spend lots of time in the career service, lots of extracurriculars, and those who graduate and don't really have anything off the bat. I'm aware that you probably have other priorities and other sort of ambitions in this role, but is this something you've thought about? And even if it hasn't been, having raised this now, what are your solutions or your ideas on how the SU could help support with that?
Definitely, employability is at the forefront of a lot of undergraduates' minds. And ironically enough, I'm currently doing interviews for the Times on graduate employment schemes. So I've literally spent the past week talking to a number of students about this exact issue. And you're completely right to say that the kind of career service at this university is an excellent one. However, it sometimes suffers from a lack of engagement because university outreach is always responded to differently than student outreach. And I think that's the wonderful benefit and privilege of the student union, because it's both an institution, but it's also student voice. They're not being approached by an adult or a member of the university. They're being approached by a fellow student. And as such, I think the student union could definitely work to not only help promote careers service things, but also run events alongside it to help get people into kind of the jobs that they might feel cut off from, or they might feel too intimidated to apply. And definitely this is something that we rolled out and worked on within Hertford College with my JCR, working on different speaker events or different collaborative events to introduce people to careers, to get people in contact with people. And we definitely saw a great delivery from that.
The lack of jobs for graduates is sort of a systematic national issue, right? And I think it speaks to maybe Tony Blair's reforms and other things. And I don't think necessarily the student union's going to solve the national jobs crisis. Would be fantastic if we could, but we can't. But I think there is things we can do. I think colleges are very good at engaging their alumni and doing alumni events and things like that. But we don't necessarily maybe get that at the university-wide level. And this sort of speaks to what we were hearing earlier, that a lot of it is quite siloed, right? And so I think maybe what the student union could do is partner with the career service on some things and do a little bit more of like university-wide alumni engagement. So you're not just siloed into the people who happen to go to your college. But I'll take the question a little bit broader and say that, like, in terms of education representation, I think there's so much we can do. For me, it comes from a passion for disabled students and advocating for disabled students. I think there's a lot of work that can be done there. I think also student suspending is also a massive disability issue, right? Because that does happen a lot of the time for medical reasons. So I think getting proper support in place for suspended students, because that varies a lot across colleges. So maybe centralizing that, having the SU do some more support there. That's also a disability. That's an education representation issue. So maybe I haven't, answered the question properly, but I think there's so much scope to do representation in that space.
I was a bit hesitant to ask this question earlier because we had some one-year master's students, but both of you have been here for over a year. And I was just wondering, like, how have you, in the past year, interacted with the SU, and how is that, like, going to change, like, your, like, how when you hopefully come into office, like, how is those experiences going to shape or influence how your work takes place?
Yeah, I think it's you first.
Maybe not as much in the past year, I'm going to be honest, but towards the first half of my degree, I think I did a reasonable amount through working with the JCR, and through I collaborated on the transformation task force as well. So I had some thoughts on that, which is why maybe I come from a place where I'm like really impressed with the way the change has happened, and I think it's been really good. I'll just say, I maybe repeat what I've said already, in that I think a lot of this is going to be about making students feel that the body has like serious legitimacy and that it is a force for them and that it can do things. And I think delivering some of the policies I've talked about, delivering some more engagement, bringing people in, all of that is about getting students to buy into the model, getting students to buy into the student union, and that will make it far more effective. So I don't come from a JCR president background. I haven't been, involved in CCR in recent terms, but I see that maybe as an advantage also, in coming from a different perspective, coming from someone who's been involved in a lot of like external like community stuff in and around the city as well. Yeah.
Well, I would definitely describe myself as a very proud convert to the JCR, to the student union even, because when I first arrived in at Hertford College, I was very promptly informed within Freshers Week that the student union was pointless and I shouldn't go anywhere near it. But then over second year, whilst working with the JCR and actually seeing the student union in action and seeing that transformation process begin, I then felt motivated to come to CCR to see how democratic representation could actually work and function. And I'm really, really excited by the delivery of the student union transformation. And definitely this is a big part of my motivation to go for this role, because I think the student union has so much potential to bring about a very positive transformation and turn into something that all students want to engage with. And I'm definitely hoping that no fresher arrives next year and is told that the student union is pointless, because we want to prove that it's not. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to, so we can have a break afterwards, go straight to closing statements, and we're going to start with Digby and then end on Sagum, because you started last time, right? So yeah, without further ado.
Thank you. I believe I can create a positive impact towards students and the SU through engagement, collaboration, and delivery, so that the SU is a place of great practice. I'm specifically running for the role of President of Undergraduates, as I'm very passionate about academic policy, and I hope to deliver a greater degree of standardization, advocate on the academic committees for standardizing guidelines surrounding exam provisions, access, and AI across colleges and courses, ensuring every undergraduate is afforded the same opportunities. I also believe that the SU is stronger and more effective when it is able to demonstrate a clear mandate through representation, and would therefore advocate for greater engagement, which is something I have already done on the JCR and through Prescom. Collaboration across JCRs and colleges can increase the level of impact that the SU can deliver, and I hope to mobilize my good working relationships with across the JCR and undergraduate body to try and improve this. Through continuing the work of the SU's transformation and promoting engagement, I believe that the SU's clear mandate can better support action and meaningful change. Thank you.
Maybe I should have written something down. As I said at the beginning, I think this is a really, really special university. It's different to sort of anywhere in the country, and I think our student union speaks to that, right? At other universities, it does a lot of maybe different things. And I want, the reason I'm here really is I want students to buy into this. I want students to feel like the SU can be a real, substantial, deliverable part of their student experience. And that comes in a number of ways. I want to continue some of the great work that's been done on student societies, bringing them more into the fold, giving them more support, making them feel like a part of the structure. I want to listen to this body. I want to listen to student leaders. And I also want to deliver some really important policy points that I think can have a massive impact. So I want to do some work on anti-racism, which I think I've seen a bit of a spike in recent years. I had an experience at Freshers Fair where a random student decided to just say something racist, which I thought was extraordinary. I want to do the food support thing I was talking about earlier. Another thing that I'm really passionate about is I would like the university to collaborate on a big external review into its sexual misconduct processes to see how we can improve those and change those. So I think there's so many things the SU can do because of its unique space, because of the uniqueness of this university, and that's why I'm here before you today.
Wonderful. So can we have a round of applause for our two candidates? I said a break after this, well, because there's only one candidate for the next one. We're actually going to go straight into that, and then we can have a break for those staying on for CCR afterwards. So let's have the candidate for the best sabbatical officer role by far, communities and common rooms. All right. So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you. So last one, guys, you've got this. Keep those eyes open. So as CCR president, I would add another C for connection, although CCCR president might not have the same ring to it. But I really believe that Oxford already has meaningful representation through the societies that we've chosen, through our common rooms. The CR presidents in this room know best. And through each of the SU candidates that have spoken so far, I think that the CCR president role uniquely has the possibility to act like a ribbon. So this would be like connecting, not controlling, all of these independently thriving communities that make up Oxford. And part of this would be emphasizing the power of CCR, of this room,
to be able to bring your community's voice, no matter what student representative you are, if you come from a common room, a society perspective, or anything. And I'm sure I'll emphasize more later my experience as St. Anne's JCR president, and also within other functions in the university, places where I've seen that students feel the need most to be represented or feel this avenue must be emphasized. But my idea is essentially connection. This is what the CCR is all about.
Applause for Roxy. And I will start off with the first question. So obviously, as we'll hear later, you've been very heavily involved with common rooms and common representation. So beyond common rooms, how will you ensure that other student collectives, such as student societies, clubs, and even newspapers, are adequately represented and feel empowered in doing the important work they do for the student community?
Well, first I'd like to pick up on two really important words that you said, which were representation and also empowerment. And I think that both of those things are really important within this role. Specifically within societies, I was the vice president of Romanian Society. And within that, we were kind of pushing for student engagement within the national elections. So to encourage the student diaspora to vote, and there were about 5 editions of, there was a lot of corruption going on, so there were a lot of reruns, but essentially with things like this, with student societies that represent maybe a nationality or a marginalized group, and also student societies that represent artistic or, as you said, journalistic intent, I think there needs to be a really, like, these are really, really broad ideals, right? So there needs to be really, really broad support. There isn't really a one single answer. And that's why being able to amplify these voices is most important. So maybe having a platform where you can kind of highlight these, the things that are going on within these societies. That's what I would think is the most important thing. I can elaborate on what, maybe.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. There's only one candidate, it's fine.
Yeah, so so in terms of how I would like concretely see that happening, as I said, like I have obviously served as the vice president of one single society representing one nationality. I can't really say what works for all kinds of nationalities, all kinds of societies. And that's why I think the most important and the best contribution that I could bring is the creation of kind of, my vision is like a centralized shared calendar where all of these societies can add their events on, and you can filter it by sports, by drama, by plays you want to see, by like different nationality events you want to go to. And I see that as hopefully being technologically possible. And secondly, being very, very helpful to have all of that in one place. That is for like the student body in general. But rather for the society presidents specifically, I see the kind of yellow pages type thing. So having kind of a list of all of the contact details of different society presidents and different points of contact might be really useful. I know especially if for some journalistic intents, if any journalists out there want to contact a specific society president for a comment or something, or me for a comment, to have these kind of these contact details really clearly accessible in one place.
Any questions from the audience? Okay, we'll start with Jesse and then go to Max and then Alyssa.
Hi, Jesse, Lincoln MCR president. One question I have for you is, you are obviously a JCR president. How are you going to make sure that you're not just taking JCR perspective and really making sure that the postgraduate voice is considered in what you're doing?
That's a really, really valuable question. So as you know, well, I was JCR president last academic year, of St. Anne's College, and I actually helped contribute through the transformation year, the creation of CCR as a concept in this room, and I've actually attended every single one of these since the beginning. But specifically for your question, I think that being in this room has really made me aware of how much, as JCR presidents, you have Prescom and you're really, really well acquainted, and actually you become really close with your fellow JCR presidents, but you actually don't have any interaction really with the MCR presidents. And I see this space as having the possibility of going beyond this kind of formal format and having some space for informal dialogue between the JCR and MCR presidents, maybe with kind of like the pizza, the refreshments that we have, or maybe through some other social events, although I don't want to burden any more presidents with any more events that they have to go to. But I think space for collaboration and to talk and to understand the perspective on the other side is really important for both sides, both the MCR and the JCR. Obviously, my experience lies within the JCR realm, but I've also worked, for example, with the SU as the impact associate, looking at how the mandates of CCR can be the most impactful. And so I think through my experiences, I can try as hard as I can to take a holistic view. And if I can't, I'll obviously use this platform to amplify MCR voices to ensure they are just as heard as JCR.
Great.
Hope that answers your question.
Wonderful. So, I said Max and Alyssa, so we go with Alyssa. Oh, you're there already. Let's go with Max. And then after Alyssa, we'll have Kat. So.
Hello, again, Max Wong from CATS MCR. At Oxford, we pay to join society and clubs. What's your thoughts on securing a budget from the university such that all membership fee are cancelled for students?
So, I actually have read this from the university website that for a student society to be considered as like an official society, it must show that it's sustainable, and through that they usually do need to have a membership fee to show that they have some source of funding that's external to the university. In some ways, I do understand your perhaps concern or maybe inquiry in that for access reasons, I think there is space for the SU to provide kind of like a society's fund for students to apply to if they want to be part of a society and they can't afford the membership fee. That should definitely be within the realm of what the SU could achieve. In terms of whether societies themselves shouldn't have to charge that, I think that it actually is a useful way of societies to judge how much they need for certain things, maybe attract different kinds of memberships for different people who want to be involved in different ways. For example, I know some societies don't charge a membership fee for like just attending regular events. I know Diplomatic Society does this, but you do need a membership to take part in some of the more like larger trips or official events. And so there can be different tiers. I think the fee at the end of the day is kind of unique to the society, but there should be space for the SU to mitigate that if that's a limiting factor for you taking part.
So, being the only candidate, not sure where the other nominations went. I think an important question, probably for the other candidates in the room, is what would you look for in a team? Like, what kind of attributes, characteristics would you like to see from your Wealth Equity Inclusion president and postgraduate and undergraduate president? Like, what do you want to see from them?
That's a really, really good question, especially considering like the SU cannot, as the sabbatical officers cannot function independently. They are such an interdependent team, and I think it's actually quite visible from your cohort how well you work together, and I think that is big kudos to you guys for that. I, as the only presidential candidate for the CCR role, I think that it's really important for me to be able to know that I could work with every single candidate that is sat in this room here today. And I think that I could. I sat up there and I listen to all of your speeches, and I think everyone is really passionate and it comes here with the right motivations. And having heard these things, I really think that the things that you all highlighted, and I won't repeat them all because you guys have all sat through it all, I think they're all really valuable, and I can't say that I disagreed with any of the points that you brought up. I think the most important part of being a team is being able to reinforce each other's dreams and ideas, keeping each other realistic, but also being able to lift each other up. And I think that I would be really happy to work with everyone here. So good luck to all of you.
Okay, and then.
Yes, I actually wanted to say a bit about that.
Oh, okay. Oh, at the very end, you can talk about Ron. Kat.
Thank you so much for speaking to us today. It was very lovely to hear your ideas and your thoughts about everything. I guess my main question is more society focused. So you mentioned a lot about your background and experience as a JCR officer and your belief on integrating a better connection between MCR and JCR as well. I was wondering how this would translate to societies as well. So a while back, we saw an initiative by, I think, Ruben Meadows from LMH, and he was talking about having this president's forum where he gathered presidents from all sorts of different societies across Oxford to, again, create that link. One thing I've noticed through my experience working on many societies at Oxford is also an issue with funding. So unlike student groups like the Union, who are funded by alumni or trustees, lots of new societies like the Oxford Blue or the Oxford Women in Government, for instance, rely very heavily on JCR funding. And that's because a lot of them have to fulfill motions, which means that they don't always necessarily get as much money as they need to make their societies bigger and more expansive. So I guess it's a two-part question. In what way do you intend to sort of create greater community and connection between all the societies? And in what way do you aim to help support societies with limited funds to help them sort of become bigger and more ambitious and grow? So yeah, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to address these in a reverse order. So starting with your final question, this year I believe that the SU have launched the Societies Fund, through which they kind of provide society funding. I would like to continue with that and expand on that, hopefully. I know some societies have already received support, but I would like to be able to expand the remit of that and to make it as less of a competition and more of an opportunity for societies to access. And secondly, for the connection point, this is actually one of the things that I mentioned in my candidate statement, so I promise I didn't think of this on the spot. It's not a cop-out answer. You can read this. I would be interested in hosting like a start of year event for all society presidents to meet. So currently there is like a JCR, MCR president event where it's like meet the SU and they have like drinks and meet. I think that there's really space for the SU to organize that for society presidents as well. To meet and collaborate at the start of the year or maybe each term, depending on how interest is. And expanding onto that, kind of one of my wilder ideas is actually expanding the RAG ball to become more of a societies ball, to include more societies. That one's a bit of a fun one, but we'll see what happens. I hope that answered your question.
All right, so I think we will now move on to closing statements / anything else you wanted to say but didn't manage to.
Cool. So as you may know, and can kind of gauge, Ron is my biggest opponent. And that might seem like a joke, but actually it's one of the realest issues that the SU has faced, especially in recent years. And so like building the legitimacy of the SU would be a game changer for what it is capable of. But that's not down to me, that's down to you guys and down to you guys voting. So actually, uniquely compared to the other roles, my job here is to convince you that this is worth voting for. So if my experience and my ideas inspire confidence, I would be honored to have your vote. But essentially, I think the CCR president is here to connect, to amplify, yes, to represent, but to create a platform where you can represent yourself when you feel represented by the SU. So I'm here with my ribbon, here to connect your communities and common rooms. So vote Roxy for triple CR president.
Wonderful. Okay, a round of applause for Roxy. And so we're going to have a 5 to 10 minute break before we start CCR, which hopefully Roxy will be chairing next year. So feel free to stretch your legs if you're not going to stay here. If not, we still have, I think, some slices of pizza outside. And wait, just before that, voting will be open on the Oxford SU Elections Hub 9th of February at 10 to the 12th of February at 8. All the information about part-time officers and student trustees will be available tomorrow on the SU website and social media. And the common room with the highest percentage turnout will receive a prize to be confirmed. Yeah. Something like that. So thank you, everyone. You may go.